Hey there, athletes. Coach John Ferry and Jason Lakritz here today to discuss the performance recovery equation. So, Jason, we'll turn it immediately over to you. How would you best describe this performance recovery equation?
So it's the equation I came up with when I first started coaching in 2017. And basically, the equation is your performance slash injury recovery. We could talk about that a little bit later.
Hmm.
Equals stress plus recovery. So stress, there's a lot of different stresses that we'll talk about, and recovery is a lot of different ways to recover. But basically, you're trying to balance those two out to have your best performance slash get the fastest injury recovery you can.
Great. So, when calculating training stress and kind of total stress, are there key
Yeah.
metrics or things that you're looking at?
Well, in terms of metrics, maybe not exactly like a number, but
Mhm.
the thing about the different stresses, we'll talk about them a little bit. Talk about training stress, right? That's the main one that we think of. That's what we as coaches give you. That's your, workouts, your weekly mileage, all that stuff, and that will, as you do more intensity and more work, it's more stress. Other stresses in your life are life stresses. In terms of you have family commitments, you have work stuff, you have travel. That's all adds stress to your body as well that we have to take into account. The third stress, mental stress. So same thing, if you're super mentally tired or stressed from something happening, that will affect the way you perform.
Yeah. And when you think about these things, I think we obviously have a lot of wearable devices and ways like maybe TSS to track training
Mhm.
stress. But you hit on those other things that are a little bit harder to quantify. Certainly, in recent years, devices like the Whoop device and Aura have started to use HRV and RHR as kind of key metrics to track some of that stress. Do you have your athletes work with that, or is it a little bit more kind of based on feel?
So those are good tools to use, especially if you're very into numbers and data, and they'll help you like see your heart rate over time, and if your heart rate's elevated, something's going on, that kind of stuff. I tend to be more on the less technology side of everything that I do, but so communication is sort of like our key, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be able to you have to be able to communicate with me about kind of what's going on, and I will assume that if you have a really big deadline at work and you stay up until 2 in the morning, I will just assume that your stress is high and that we shouldn't work out hard the next day. Whether that's actually true in terms of like heart rate numbers, it probably is, but I don't actually know. But I think going through communication in that way really gives you a good feel of sort of what's going on.
Yeah. Well, no mystery here. I think that the sports kind of recovery marketplace has kind of ballooned here in the certainly over the last decade, and now this humongous industry. So, what would you say, as even a doctor of physical therapy, are your main recommendations for the recovery after training stress?
So yeah, so there's basically three types of recovery that go into my head. And two are really basic functions of life that people don't think about too much. Basically, sleep. Number one, if you don't sleep, then everything else after doesn't matter as much. Uh, Second is nutrition. If you sleep great, then you have very bad nutrition, and then everything else after that doesn't matter again. So you sleep good, eat well. Then I have what I call recovery modalities, which is basically everything else. Hot packs, cold ice, PT, strengthening, mobility, ice plunge, whatever you want to call it. That's kind of like the third tier. And without the first two, the third tier is not nearly as effective as it could be.
Yeah. And funny, it always comes back to those two, the sleep and
Yeah.
nutrition really is your backbone. Would you say, working with athletes in particular, are there moments when the recovery starts to be overemphasized and actually the kind of training needs to be escalated as opposed to the other way around? Does that kind of come into the equation?
Yeah. So if I look at the equation, right, it usually doesn't go that way. But if we look at the equation, basically your performance equals the balance of the two, the stress plus recovery, right? So if your
Hmm.
recovery is super high and you want your performance to increase, you can increase your stress, kind of thing. If that makes sense.
Yep.
Usually, that's what we strive for, right? We're striving for this really high training stretch, really high recovery, so you get a huge performance gain.
Mhm.
Most of the time, what we see with athletes, right, especially normal people, athletes that we coach mostly, is that recovery arrow is pointing the wrong direction. It's pointing down. It's getting less, decreased. So then we have to modify the training a bit to match what they have. And sometimes you can control those. You can control certain aspects of your stress, like training stress, and
Mhm.
you can do things like yoga or something or meditation to help kind of decrease the mental stress. So the ways you can sort of like mediate some of that, but sometimes you can't, right? So really, it's you're really modifying training a lot because the recovery piece is what gets sort of lost in the whole thing.
Right. And so, as not only a coach, but PT and really focusing on runners and athletes in particular, I have to imagine you get to see a lot of people who are overstressing themselves, kind
Mhm.
of not quite nailing that equation a little bit. Are there signs, symptoms, things to be looking out for to sort of prevent them from ending up in your office as a PT?
Yeah, so people in my office like come in because something hurts or I can't run as much as I can because at mile 5 their toe goes numb or something. So like those are signs that the pain there is just a sign your body's not able to recover from wherever you're giving it. So pain is one sign. Other signs too, again, not sleeping, not being able to sleep, not being able not being able to eat the right amount of food. So like you might feel no appetite, low appetite, I guess we'll call it. Fatigue for no reason really. Those kind of like big major like systemic kind of things are things you're looking out for. And if somebody's like coming to you after a 30-minute easy run and be like, man, and you see their pace and it was pretty easy, and they're like, I'm just tired. That's like sign one. Like, oh, okay, we should. Are you sleeping? No, I sleep more. Are you eating the right amount of stuff? All right, eat the right stuff. If sleeping's good and eating's good, you're still super fatigued and tired. Yeah, you're not adapting to the training. That we're getting too much stress in the rest of your life. So you got to figure out how to bring that stress down so that the recovery you are doing is working.
So So certainly one of those things a little bit easier said than done sometimes as
Oh, for
well.
sure.
So, once I kind of going back to we've got these wearables, they're super good at quantifying some things, but there's so much of an intangible, which is that kind of personal, mental, etc. When you start to see some of the things you're talking about and athletes not recovering appropriately or, kind of digging themselves into a hole, where are the adjustments that you make? Is it in training? Is it in their personal life, etc.? How do you help kind of balance that out?
Yeah, so if they're already in the fatigue zone, we'll call it. That's a
Hmm.
made up term. But fatigue zone, I guess I'll call it. I just made it up in my head now. You're gonna adjust training pretty much right away, because you can never training too easy is never bad. You're never gonna get hurt from training too easy. You're never gonna get deeper into a hole by training too easy. So training easier is kind of the first step I just do because there's nothing bad that can happen. Then we'll talk about, all right, now we decrease training a little bit. Now we talk about now your sleep, talk about now your nutrition, and then if all that becomes good, then we could talk about more PT. We talk a little more about things in training that can be maneuvered. We talk about marathon training, right? Is what we coach mostly. Everybody wants to do a marathon. Not everybody, but most people want to do a marathon
It's definitely
or
getting all the glory these days.
yeah, yeah. So it's very stressful to do a marathon, right? It's a lot of running, and I think we talk about this another time, but about the training for a marathon. Most recreational people are only running 30 miles a week, 40 miles a week, maybe. I don't know how many people you have doing more than that. Probably not that many.
No.
So if you're doing a 20-mile long run on the weekend, right, that's half of your training for the whole week is in one day. It's really hard to recover from that, right?
Yeah.
So you might need more than one day to recover. Or maybe you need 2 days. Maybe you need to do a light bike ride. And when I say light bike ride, I mean like an actual light bike ride, not a actual like Peloton class. Uh, to recover from that, where versus like the pros that we see on Strava and stuff, they're doing 20-mile long runs. The next day they're doing 20 more miles and they're doing a workout. They have a couple of advantages over us, right? They're running hundreds of miles a week, 100, 120
Mhm.
miles a week.
Yeah.
So there's only 25% of their training is 20 miles, right? So that's a lot less on their body. Uh, so less training stress, but also they're probably getting a massage and they're probably sleeping 10 hours a night that I wish I could do, but kids don't let you do that. They're probably eating really well. Josh Kerr,
Mhm.
he won the world championship for 200 meters, and he came out and was like, yeah, I decided I was going to hire a personal chef to make all my meals. Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's awesome. He's probably getting really good recovery from those meals, but I don't hire a chef. I can't hire a chef. So there's certain things that they're doing that they're just more optimally able to do than what we can do. So copying their training plans, copying their ways of doing things isn't really realistic for us.
Yeah.
I think I got off on a tangent there, but you got my man.
No, I think that's an amazing point and ties right in, which because we do, I think there's this pressure to mimic people who are being at their most successful level, and it doesn't always work that way. We're doing different things, living very different lives, and so what I'd be curious because you're a great example. You were a D1 runner, a very accomplished athlete, also a family man now, a very different
Mm-hmm.
situation there. So I can't imagine you're putting in 100-mile weeks anymore, but still
Yeah.
kind of working at a high level. So when you're trying to balance training, work, personal, and then just kind of the mental strain that goes with it all, what would be your top recommendations for trying to kind of keep the equation in balance?
Listening to your body
Okay,
is like very.
great. Yeah.
I know it's kind of simple, but I'll give a good example of myself. I guess start talking about my
Yeah.
situation, right? So yeah, right. I have kids, so I'm running at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, get it done as early as possible. Sometimes the weather lately hasn't cooperated very well with doing that, but I don't really have a choice. If I'm going to run, it's going to be at that time, whether it's snowing, raining, freezing cold, hot, whatever it is. I'm going to go at that time, or I'm not, or I'm not.
Yeah.
So a couple weeks ago on Saturday, it was raining really hard. I don't know if you remember that day, but it was a crazy rainstorm. I was like, well, I'm running a marathon. I got to run 20 miles. So I went out there, at 4:45 in the morning. So on my run, it's pouring.
Hmm.
I go out there and do it. I get done. I'm just like totally wasted from the workout. Like super tired, like awful. I don't feel good. Like stomach's all upset. I'm trying to do the kid stuff, but I just have to like eat. I can't. It's like right. I'm in bad shape, right? So I know that yeah, I'm supposed to run a run. That was on Saturday. I'm
Hmm.
supposed to do a Monday run. So Sunday was a planned off day anyway. So that was off. But Monday I was supposed to do a run, but like woke up Monday, nope. Body was just like, you could run if you want to, but it's probably not gonna be very good. Just a sign of like I can't do it. I need to take another day off. So I took another day off. Tuesday came around. Tuesday morning showed up. Still wasn't really quite ready to go. Tuesday afternoon felt better and went for an easy run, 30 minutes, kind of got it in, and then went about my week kind of as normal. But it took an extra what was that 48 hours to recover than maybe I expected to. I guess 36 hours extra, but it's like a whole 72 hours to recover from this one run that I did. And part of it was 20 miles, so that's long,
Mhm.
and I'm only doing 45 miles a week right now, so that's a lot of my mileage.
Yeah.
It was in this rainstorm that I was cold. I got done. It was not a fun time. So I had to listen to my body. My body kind of told me what to do with that, right? Um, and not just the training part. It also told me I needed to eat. I needed to drink. I needed to well, told me I needed to take a nap, but I couldn't do that. So maybe that's why I took longer to recover. But told me I wanted to take a nap at 10 a.m. I was like, can I go to sleep? That's what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing, right? Listen to your body and like actually listen to it and take it for what it is. And the training will take its place as you let it.
Yeah. Well, I think we have three amazing takeaways that you gave us, Jason, and I'll kind of lay them out quickly here, which
Yeah.
is the most important aspects for recovery are sleep and nutrition. And the best piece of advice that you could possibly give someone as both an elite athlete and a doctor of physical therapy and coach is to listen to your body. And I think that's about as simple as it gets, huh?
That's perfect. Yeah, you summed it up just perfectly.